Have you ever cared about something so much that losing it scared you more than anything? Like your pet when you catch yourself staring at them and wondering about the day you might have to say goodbye and how you'll even survive it. When was the last time you let someone in knowing they could break your heart? The moment where you decide the connection is worth the risk, even though you can already feel how much it will hurt if it ends. Would you still love if you knew you'd lose them one day? Because deep down, we all know the answer, and it's what makes the choice so terrifying and so important. I know these are very pressing questions, one I have a hard time answering too, but that's what we're diving into today. I know some of you are going to ask, Kid, is this video going to be depressing? Not exactly, more like therapeutic. The kind that leaves you lighter, even if it stings a little. And I highly suggest you don't watch this like a regular video essay, but as something to feel your way through. Anyways, yes, lighter. Oh boy, a heartthrob to many, yet in the game he seems to have his eyes glued on one person, allegedly. The undefeated champion, also known as Red Scarf of the Sons of Caledon in the Outer Ring, likes to show off even though he'll swear he doesn't, full of aura and flashy design with his sunglasses on 24/7, and he comes off as confident in battles and making wins look effortless. But for a man who never stops winning, Lighter's story is about something else entirely. But before we dive into that, we'll start with where it all began. Before joining Sons of Caledon, Lighter was a mercenary. He founded a company with 3 other close companions and they appointed him as their leader. Over time, he became close with every member and even knew their families personally. So let's talk a little bit more about his company. From the get-go, they were more of a tightly knit group of mercenaries who trusted each other with their lives. They split into 2 squads based on ether aptitude. Members with higher ether aptitude handled jobs inside the hollow, which were highly risky but also high rewards. As with many young and ambitious leaders, Lighter admits he was eager to prove himself and grow stronger. That drive naturally pulled him towards the hollow jobs, but it also meant he spent less time with the other squad, and over time they complained to him that they felt neglected. And after reflecting on his own behavior, he eventually made an effort to give the non-hollow squad more of his time. And one day, a big payout hollow mission came in. Lighter planned to take it himself, but Dane, his second-in-command, and the others insisted they could handle it on their own. They knew Lighter was stretched thin and they wanted to take the burden off him. Lighter admits he had a bad feeling about letting them go, but out of trust in his teammates, he allowed them to take the mission. Unfortunately, his intuition was right. The mission failed and none of them made it back. Lighter searched the hollow for them afterward, but all he found were their identification tags. After their deaths, he disbanded the company, believing he was unfit to lead. He paid severance and even compensation to the families of his fallen comrades. In doing so, he took on a massive debt he couldn't repay. So to work it off, he was forced into the underground fighting ring. His time there was relentless. Match after match, opponent after opponent. Lighter described himself as like a zombie moving on instinct rather than passion. He gained a reputation for rarely losing, but all victories to him felt hollow. Eventually, Big Daddy, who was the leader of the Sons of Caledon at that time, took notice of him. Seeing the value of a high-profile fighter, Big Daddy paid off his debt and brought him into the gang. And that's what brings us to today. Lighter holds the title of champion, which is the role chosen to represent the gang in one-on-one matches before a bigger fight breaks out. Winning means boosting your gang members' morale and intimidating the other side. So basically, the champion is always expected to be the strongest. And it sort of makes sense, you know? If you're undefeated, a pair of sunglasses feels right. It makes you look untouchable. And Lighter's almost never seen without it, but truthfully, it is due to his old eye injury and protects him from the sight of blood. He's also taken on dangerous jobs alone under the guise of protecting others. And it seems that confident and charismatic image was just on the surface, and especially in those early days, it wasn't there at all. He barely spoke to anyone in the gang, and even Bernice recalled how he wouldn't eat with her and turn down drinks. It's a far cry from the champion we see now, who's ready to protect the people he cares about and a place to call home. And it's tempting to think the story writes itself. He joined the Sons of Caledon, a little bit rocky in the beginning, but eventually found a place to belong. But that's too simple, because if acceptance was all it took, why does he still have his guard up and keep his victories hidden? If confidence came naturally, why still hide behind sunglasses like a shield? And how does someone who never loses still carry a fear of blood into every match? There's still so many questions I could ask, but these are the main ones I want to highlight. And to answer them, we need to pull back and look past the image he has built around himself. Because underneath the champion is a man shaped by one moment he can't undo. And to understand that, we have to look at the traits that have always defined Leiter. Leiter can deny all he wants, but he has always had a high caliber in leadership. You don't get appointed head of a mercenary company just for being strong. You get there because people believe you can protect your team and make the right calls. He even said it himself.
Have you actually taken the time to understand your team members? Do you know what kind of leader they want? Can you make the right decisions? Can you protect everyone? Can you help them grow? To take it further, do you even have people you can call true companions? Being a great fighter is the least of a mercenary leader's concerns. Without the support of their peers, a mercenary leader, no matter how strong, is meaningless. That's just some advice from my experience. Take it or leave it.
And as a good leader, part of that is knowing when not to take the risk. Back when he led his mercenary company, he split the team into 2 squads based on their ether aptitude. At first glance, as a mercenary, throwing everyone into the hollow missions would have maximized profit. But Leiter wasn't interested in squeezing every drop of money at the cost of safety. And that choice alone says a lot that he's not just considerate, but a compassionate person. I mean, he even believes that it's valid to duel over a guy who was mad at Leiter over a petty reason. Yeah, it was because Leiter drove his bike past his window and scared his cat when he was trying to take a picture.
I didn't expect that you could challenge someone for a reason like that.
Well, for cat people, their cats are like family. So if they miss out on cute moments for whatever reason, it could be something they'd regret for a long time. So this challenge is valid. I'm ready to accept it and make amends.
Mainly, when the non-hollow squad started speaking up about feeling neglected, he reflected on his actions and adjusted his priorities to spend more time with them. I mean, he could have shrugged it off because after all, they weren't the ones bringing in the high-paying jobs, but he didn't. It shows how he sees value in every person on his team. But most importantly, Leiter's edge has always been that he's highly perceptive. Like how he talks about an old friend who was much stronger than him but couldn't even beat Leiter's record because Leiter had better skill and agility in fighting. We can see that same sharpness in his present-day missions with the Sons of Caledon. While Caesar was focused on an immediate fight, Leiter notices something doesn't add up and takes action to prevent the rest of the gang from walking into trouble. He even noticed the little details, how the gangs they fought were different from the day before, which made Fairy chimed in, saying she hoped the proxy would get along with him. And honestly, moments like this makes it clear why. Taking it all together, Leiter's someone who deeply considers other people's well-being and doesn't let ego get in the way of good judgment, which is exactly why his bad feeling about his companion's last mission wasn't just a passing thought. The detail was there. A high reward that seemed too good to be true almost always came with a serious risk, and he knew it. And considering how shady this system is, especially with people like Hartman and Porcelumex, it's not hard to imagine that Leiter's companions were just pawns in someone else's game. Even Harumasa was suspicious of that incident. But before I make more ass-blasting sound theories, I'm not trying to say Leiter knew exactly what was going on behind the scenes, but it's easy for someone like him to notice the red flags. Yet, out of trust, he made the call to let them go anyway. That's why this adds a huge layer of depth, because the guilt to him wasn't due to his ignorance, but an active choice against his better judgment. In other words, the guilt gives him no mental escape since there's no "I couldn't have known" safety net. That same guilt is why he went to such extremes to make it right, even though he knew it could never undo what happened. He disbanded the company and paid severance to every family, taking on such a massive debt that it sent him into the underground ring just to work it off. And it didn't just stop there. Even in the present day, he still tries to give back to the families of his fallen comrades, like Dean's sister, who now refuses his help because she's financially stable on her own. But the point isn't whether they need it, it's that Leiter still feels he owes them, as if no amount of money could ever balance the scale he tipped the day he let the squad walk into the hollow without him. Of course, trusting his teammates wasn't a mistake, and the accident wasn't something anyone could have predicted. But knowing that doesn't change how he feels, because in his mind, he still saw the danger and let them walk into it, costing their lives. Which makes a lot of sense, his survivor's guilt, especially when he mentioned that he wished, at the very least, he could have died with them. After that tragedy, every fight in the underground ring felt like he was on borrowed time. Life stopped feeling like something to look forward to, and that's why he flirts with the idea of death.
People in the underground fighting pit said I was strong because of my winning streak. But I've always wondered, was it really because I was strong? Or because I've been yearning for death ever since then?
He's not actively seeking it, but justifies why risking himself in dangerous fights never seemed reckless to him. If anything happened, it wouldn't matter. And if he's not waking up tomorrow, it would be fine too. And because of this, it also fuels the belief that he had failed as a leader, to a point of refusing to make choices on behalf of others. Now it just becomes a deeper cut, because it attacks both self-worth and the ability to let others rely on him. Being loved and cared for, he doesn't even believe he deserves that anymore. And for the sunglasses, he admits an old eye injury long since healed is just an excuse to wear them now. Of course, he had to keep his eyes covered for so long during recovery that it became second nature and a barrier. But it's not just to protect him from seeing blood. And this is where I have to be extra clear. His hemophobia might have existed long before, since it's never stated when it began, but it's also plausible that it was made worse by the death of his friends. So blood becomes more of a trigger to him for the casualties that come with loss. And when you combine that with being a winning underground fighter, you get this contradiction. He's willing to fight, he's willing to risk himself, but he's still afraid of being fully present in the ugliest moments.
After being there for a while, I became scared to look anyone in the eye. I was afraid of what I'd see staring back at me.
So in the end, the sunglasses he wears all the damn time becomes a perfect emotional barrier between himself and the world. And that's exactly the same as how he handles relationships. Even in the ring, every punch he throws is just a step toward paying off his debt. He doesn't even remember any of his opponents because he refuses to see them as people. Because if he did, he'd have to accept that these are just more people he's about to hurt. In the early days joining the Sons of Caledon, he refuses to mingle with other members because he learned that closeness would eventually lead to loss. He's haunted, sometimes comparing himself with constructs like Billy who don't have hearts or lungs, and perceives it partly as a blessing to be less emotionally vulnerable. That's why trust and connection doesn't come easy, because for Leiter, letting someone in means accepting the possibility of watching them get hurt, or worst, being powerless to stop it. All in all, Leiter cared about his people, always did. That's why he trusted them. That's why he made the call to let them take that mission, even with a bad feeling in his gut. And that's exactly what haunts him now, because in his mind, caring leads to trust. Trust overweighed his judgment, and that choice led to loss. It's the same chain he's been carrying ever since. So, if losing once was enough to make him build these walls, would he ever dare to face another? It's like a go-to word for people to hand you some wisdom phrases when you're hurting. That's life. It will get better, or pain is a human experience. I get it. They mean well, and maybe those words are true, but when you're in the middle of it, they feel nothing. It's like someone handing you a band-aid for a broken rib. And especially when you're facing loss or grief, it feels like a punch instead. It's easy to talk about loss in theory, to throw out big ideas about love, grief, and moving on. So before I go any further without sounding so detached, I want you to know I have been there too. Like when I lost my little orange kitten, I wasn't even there when it happened. I got the news while I was away in another country. I just knew he was sick for a couple of days, and the next day, I was told he was gone. I thought I'd taken it well. I did feel sad, but I continued on with my life as usual. But weeks later, it hits me. When I got home, I thought about going to pour food into his bowl and realized there was no reason to. I look at the spot on the couch where he used to curl up and swear I could still see him there. His toys were still scattered on the floor, like he might come running back any minute to play with them. I'd scroll through my phone gallery and cry at photos and videos I'd already seen 100 times because those are the only things I have left of him. That's the cruel thing about loss and grief. It comes and hits you like waves. It keeps hurting over and over when you're reminded of these small things. And the only reason it hurts at all is because that love was real. If I'd never cared about him, I wouldn't be grieving him. And that's just one of the many losses I've carried. If I can still feel deeply hurt over a kitten I've just met for 3 months, then you can imagine what it's like when it's a person. But I'm not here to compare because at the end of the day, I still carry all of them now. I still feel sadness, I still cry, and some days it's just as heavy as it was back then. It's not that it hurts less, but I've learned to live with it. I probably heal because I've just grown strong enough to carry the same amount of pain when I felt the day it first hit. If I could bring them back, I would in a heartbeat, but I can't. And the only thing I can do is accept that they're gone and keep going. Which again, it is easier said than done. But the reason why I'm telling you this is because what I'm about to say next comes from a place where I have felt that same kind of pain. Of course, loss can also be the end of a friendship, a breakup, whatever heartbreak you're going through, or a dream you had to let go. All of it still leaves something heavy behind. Most people see love and loss as opposites, where one fills you up with joy, the other tears you apart. But the truth is, they're inseparable. If you've never cared about someone, losing them wouldn't hurt. The pain only exists because that connection mattered. We don't usually think about it this way, but every time we care about something, we're already making a deal with loss. And it's easy to see the small things like your favorite book that gets worn out, the pet you know won't live forever, or the hobby or hyperfixation you'll one day put down. And it's the same with people. The moment we let someone matter to us, we're opening the door to the possibility of losing them. And the deeper the bond, the heavier the cost when it's gone. And love, all its forms, is the reason we ever grieve at all. And here's to mention that we all deal with loss and grief differently. Some days we feel like writing a video essay about it gracefully, and some days we just want to be drowned in our own tears. And that's okay. It's still a way of living, which is why I felt Lighter's story managed to portray that almost perfectly. Truthfully, I was a bit underwhelmed with the pacing and plot besides giggling and curling my toes over Lighter Wise. I was expecting something intense since, after all, he's a fighter. But looking back, maybe that wasn't the point at all. His story wasn't in some explosive plot twist or getting his ass beat once, goes through a 30 episodes training arc, coming back shredded with a new haircut, unlocking 12 new aura forms, and soloing the final boss while a flashback montage plays over a J-pop song about never giving up. Typical shonen seinen anime plotline, I know. All he did was fight a bunch of NPCs with just a couple of punches. But it makes sense if Lighter's whole public persona persona is about winning, then the more interesting story to tell is what happens when winning isn't the point anymore. His art flips the expectation that instead of showing how he becomes stronger in the ring, it shows how he learns to accept the one thing a champion isn't supposed to do: lose. And in his case, losing isn't about a match, but about grief, how he responds to it, and how he's willing to live with it. His way forward can be seen through him rebuilding trust and connection, which was the same thing that once shattered him. So let's recall our earlier discussion of how deep his guilt was. I know I've been circling around this point, and you might already connect the dots, but the main idea is that his guilt, particularly the self-blame, is a response to his grief. Shocking? Not really. The real question is why? Well, when we lose someone, our thoughts go searching for a way to make sense of it, especially when they're dead and gone. Like, literally just gone. How could our brain even process that shit? That's why we're never fully prepared to face grief. And when that logic doesn't add up, our minds try to create their own. And that's where some of us will try to hold onto guilt instead, especially when we see the death was preventable. Ultimately, it's a way to avoid the excruciating pain of grief. Sometimes the guilt turns inward, blaming ourselves. Other times it turns outward, blaming someone else just so the pain has somewhere else to go. Either way, guilt gives the illusion of control because believing we could have done something feels safer than accepting that we couldn't. And for Leiter, that's exactly what happened. It's easier to ask, what if I had said no? Or what if I had gone with them? And to sit with the pain of knowing that no matter what he did, he can still lose the people he cared for. And I wish I pulled this out of my ass, but unfortunately, Leiter's way in response to grief is a reflection of reality. That guilt is a highly common emotion to grief. And what's crucial to note is that the more someone blames themselves, the more intense their grief is, making it harder to process the loss. So rather than coming in terms with their loss, prolonged guilt keeps them emotionally stuck and eventually makes healing much harder. Now it feels like everything is coming together, from his lifeless days in the underground ring to the moment he was handed the red scarf thinking it was just another arena to fight in without purpose. He blamed himself so much he couldn't even give himself the space to grieve because he thinks he doesn't deserve to. In the past, he buried himself in avoidance and carried the weight of every mistake like chains. And the Leiter we see now is still wrestling with guilt, but this time he's moving forward. He's found people he cares for deeply and a home worth protecting. With each step, he's learning towards accepting love and all the risk and loss that follows. It's not easy, but at least it's the start of healing, even if the journey is far from over. For Leiter, healing isn't a triumphant moment where the pain just disappears. It's a messy, linear process where sometimes it's moving inches instead of miles. Healing means carrying that loss as part of us, but not letting it harden our heart or close us off from everything good that's left. And we see that in Leiter, where it's less about forgetting and more about learning how to live vulnerably with all that love and sorrow woven together. Understanding loss often forces us to rethink how we relate to other people and ourselves. For Leiter, truly grasping what he's lost was the first step that allows him to open up to others again. For instance, instead of always pushing people away, he starts to accept small gestures of friendship like sharing in a meal or just inviting a friend to join him daydreaming. These moments may seem mundane, but for Leiter, they mark real progress. Each time he risked opening up a little more, whether by reminiscing about a lost companion, letting someone support him in a tough moment, or even joking about his struggles, it's a step toward rebuilding trust. While it's true that big Daddy was the one who pulled Lighter out of the darkness, that lifeline alone doesn't erase the pain. It wasn't just rescue or a title that he needed, but genuine belonging. That's where the other members of the Sons of Caledon and the Outer Ring community come in. Day by day, their support and cheers gave Lighter permission to lower his guard and to show up as himself instead of just a champion. And through them, Lighter began to believe he could be a part of something bigger and that there was more to fight for. And with these new bonds, his guilt over his past losses and mistakes is redirected into his drive to protect his new friends, fight fair matches, or strive for victory. And instead of letting guilt overwhelm him, he uses it as motivation to do better, be more honorable, and create meaning out of winning. Lighter understands loving and caring someone means you might lose them. But even if such an ending is certain, it also means that he has the chance to protect them while they're still here. That's why every fight is a way of making peace with the past, to give everything he's got, so he never has to feel the regret of not doing enough ever again. But it's with Proxy that things get a little deeper. A lot of first, if you will. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. For example, Lighter is someone who always insisted on going solo, trusting no one else with the dirty work, and letting Proxy join him is actually a big thing. When Proxy found out that Lighter was about to do a risky mission on his own, Proxy absolutely refused to be left behind. And at first, you can see Lighter hesitating, all stubborn because, well, trauma and trust issues and all that fun stuff. But when Proxy insists, somehow Lighter relents. And from that moment, suddenly it's not just me against the world, but us, as he experienced for the first time letting someone in and sharing the danger. That's why the moment when he says thank you and expressing his gratitude for Proxy's guidance hits so much harder. But thank you for guiding him in the hollow? Well, he's already pretty skilled, so that thanks means a lot more than just advice on the best route. What Proxy really did was show Lighter something important without even meaning to. By staying by his side, Proxy helped Lighter remember that it doesn't have to carry everything alone, and the sweetness of victory when shared by the people you love.
I have my people, and a home I want to protect. I'm sorry for making you worry, but thank you. I'm glad that besides this red scarf, you've also gotten to witness my small moment of glory.
Lighter's pivotal moments with Proxy are also small celebrations of him letting joy and connection back into his life after years of guilt and isolation. For once, he invites someone to share in the good things, such as letting Proxy to join him on a ride or sticking around for simple fun, even daring to trade jokes and play along with the banter instead of putting on that champion's mask. These are the moments where you realize he's starting to believe he deserves a little lightness too. But what stands out even more is how Lighter gradually opens up about his past. He trusts Proxy enough to share about what happened to his old crew, whether the pain, the guilt, and the reason he became so guarded. There's this almost childlike honesty in the way he asks Proxy to keep it between them.
I didn't realize I'd said so much. Can you promise me one thing? Don't tell my teammates what I just told you. It'll be a real pain if they knew. Big Daddy might drag me into a late-night heart-to-heart. Caesar would definitely want to dig into the details, and Lucy, well, need I say more? Piper might be the only one who'd let it go.
But even then, you can sense how heavy that grief still sits inside him. And this just tells Lighter is still struggling with how to carry the memories and regrets. I could go on, but I don't want to ramble more because if you go through every quest and events, you will catch Lighter is attached to Proxy because of the reasons we discussed before. So, whenever the Proxy's around, suddenly the champion's armor isn't quite so impenetrable, yeah? However, I do want to point out one event where I personally like to mention. It was the moment when we bumped into Lighter at the Dew gardening shop. Here we see how he started to accept death as a natural, unavoidable part of life, something that, while painful, doesn't have to define him. Lighter talks matter-of-factly about how losing companions is all too common in their world, how one moment they're laughing by your side and the next they're gone. He even calls it fate, showing a shift from fighting or blaming toward a kind of resigned understanding. Those are just honest words he shares to a few people, like Proxy, before quickly changing the subject to something lighter, such as the simplicity of favorite flowers. It's a subtle but powerful sign that while grief still lingers, Lighter is moving toward peace. And that brings us to the flowers themselves. Lighter mentioned that he used to always go for white lilies, the classic symbol for mourning. But this time though, he asked for advice, and she offers soft-toned flowers since they seem appropriate for his request. This might be a stretch, but choosing a different flower for a memorial is a sign that maybe he's giving himself permission to remember his old companions in a new light. Perhaps their death was no longer a tragedy for his mistake, but a part of his story that can be honored for what it was, and bonds worth cherishing even after they're gone. The choice of softer colors feels like Lighter's way of accepting that their memory can carry warmth and pride alongside the pain. And in that moment, grief gives way, even just a little, to something gentler, like a remembrance touched with hope, and allowing the love that once had nowhere to go now to color the past differently. And of course, the purple lilacs that were given to Proxy. Whatever Lighter said to Orchidea when choosing the bouquet was definitely written in the meaning of those lilacs. Now, if you know a thing or two about flowers, you'll catch the layered meaning right away. So purple lilacs are usually related to one's first love, or the first time one feels love for someone. Now, whether you see it as a friendly gesture or something a bit more, it's clear that Lighter is honoring a new chapter in his life, and perhaps a secret confession that Proxy is the first person who's made him feel this kind of closeness and affection that he'd like to cherish. And I hope he gets to have that kind of closeness with other people as well in the future. I know it's been quite a journey on this one, and it's a little bit more messy, but that's the truth of it, right? This probably can be a realization or a reminder to us that we don't choose to care because it's permanent. We care knowing it might hurt because it's the only way to ever truly belong or be changed by someone else. Maybe the real answer to those tough questions in the beginning isn't about finding comfort in certainty or endurance. Perhaps it's about accepting that our willingness to risk love is what gives meaning to every connection, every goodbye, and every ugly and beautiful moments in between. And hey, I don't know if this changes anything, but here's another thought that might make things feel a little lighter. Perhaps grief can be a way of carrying the love that remains, a love left in your hands to hold and cherish and share with the world. And this goes for other kinds of loss too, like I mentioned before. Like after a friendship ends, the care you felt for that person can find its way into new relationships or acts of kindness. When you go through a breakup, the love and lessons from that time can help you grow, opening your heart for new connections. And if you lose a dream you once held close, all the passion and hope from it can still inspire your next step and maybe even give someone else courage. In all those moments, the love you're left with doesn't have to fade. It's yours to carry forward and to bring a bit more goodness into the world. So if you're scared of losing or struggling to let go or even committing to what it takes to love, know that you're not alone. You're living the same story as me, others, and also Lighter, which is to love bravely and to discover over and over and over that it matters more because it doesn't last forever.